Hello, this is Lisa, CEO of Site for White and White Sense, welcoming you to this week's Talking News on Friday the 21st of March 2025. A deep heart thank you to everyone who sent messages regarding my retirement. It is not going to be imminent. It will take a few months to find a replacement once we've gone through the recruitment process, but thank you so much for all the kind words that people have said. This week, Chris and I went over to Sandown, to the Sandown Towns Women Guild, where we were presented with a cheque. We have been their Charity of the Year for the last 12 months, and this was instigated by Sheila, one of our members. So a huge thank you to Sheila and all of the ladies at the Towns Women Guild for the contribution that's been made to our fundraising. It is very, very much appreciated. Tonight, Ruth and I are going to the Isle of Wight Radio Business Awards as we have been nominated as Charity of the Year. We are down to the last three, but we don't know who we're up against. I'm sure whoever wins will be a very worthy winner. Thank you. Lisa, CEO, Site for White and White Sense.
Here is this week's charity news, the week commencing the 21st of March. Swimming at Medina is on Monday between 1:15pm and 2pm. We have the whole pool, so whether you wish to swim lanes or just have gentle exercise in the pool, you will be made very welcome. The cost is £6 and transport is available, although limited. All members are very welcome to join.
On Monday, Paula from White Sense will be at Wootton Community Centre between 1:30pm to 3pm as part of the Wootton Together monthly event. Please pop along and say hello.
Yoga at Millbrook House on Tuesday between 1:45pm and 2:45pm. The cost is £4, including refreshments afterwards. This group is now full, but if you wish to put your name down on the waiting list, please call the office.
Coffee and Chat is on Wednesday starting at 10am until 11:30am. The cost is £2 to include drinks and cake. Staff are on hand to help with any queries and to demonstrate equipment. During our coffee and chat session, we will be holding Site for White catch-up and feedback starting at 11am. This is an opportunity for members to give input into the services and activities we provide.
Striders is on Friday and the group are walking 5 miles around the Borthwood Sandown area. If you would like more details on this, do not hesitate to call the office. Several members have been inquiring about our shorter walk and talk. Our first date is April the 11th, where we will be walking between Freshwater and Yarmouth. More details to follow.
Our Dress for Less agency is holding a fashion show next Saturday, March the 29th at Cowles Masonic Lodge. The tickets are £12 each, but you can bring mum along for £10. This includes a glass of Prosecco and light refreshments. Tickets can be purchased from Dress for Less in Newport or by calling the office.
Our fundraising for Easter is going very well, and we thank all our wonderful knitters for taking part. This year our Easter novelties will be on sale in various locations across the island, as well as Millbrook House, for a suggested donation of £2.50.
We are once again holding a pudding and quiz evening on Friday the 25th of April at Millbrook House. A maximum of 4 per team and a charge of £5 per person. Teams are limited, so please call the office and put your name down before they sell out.
Our monthly 100 Club has spare balls available. If anyone would like to buy a ball, it is £2 a month or £24 for the full year. The more balls in the draw, the higher the prize money each month. If you would like to take part in our monthly draw, please call the office. This is part of our fundraising activities.
This is Chris reading an article from the Island Echo. Community collects 13 kilograms of waste during Sandown Beach clean. 38 volunteers rolled up their sleeves and took to Sandown Beach for a clean-up in partnership with the Marine Conservation Society on Sunday the 16th of March. And what a difference they made. In just a few hours, the group cleared 13.25 kilograms of waste from the shoreline. Among the rubbish were pieces of glass, plastic, food waste, lollipop sticks, rope, and bits of man-made wood. All things that don't belong on our beaches and certainly don't belong in the ocean. This wouldn't have been possible without the incredible volunteers who showed up despite the chilly morning. Among those taking part were staff from Sandown-based Top Mops. Sarah Ford, Relationship Manager at Top Mop, says, "We're so grateful to everyone who took the time to help. It's always a bit shocking to see just how much waste is out there, but knowing we've removed over 13 kilograms of it, well, that's something to be proud of. And this is just the start. There's always more to do, and we'd love to see even more people getting involved next time, whether it's joining a future cleanup, cutting down on single-use plastics, or simply spreading the word. Every little action helps." The Isle of Wight company, Beta Pack, supplied most of the tools needed to get the job done.
This is Brian reading an item from Isle of Wight Radio. Motion to support people in care tabled by Isle of Wight councillor. A motion to support people who have been in care has been tabled by an Isle of Wight councillor. Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care and Public Health, Councillor Debbie Andre, put forward the proposal to be discussed and voted on at Wednesday's full council meeting. The motion is to support care-experienced people, or those that at any point in their life and for however long were in care, according to Local Government Association LGA guidance. Councillor Andre's motion says, care-experienced people face significant barriers that impact them throughout their lives. Despite the resilience of many care-experienced people, society too often does not take their needs into account. Care-experienced people often face discrimination and stigma across housing, health, education, relationships, employment, and the criminal justice system. The public sector equality duty requires public bodies, such as councils, to eliminate unlawful discrimination, harassment, and victimisation of people with protected characteristics. It goes on to propose 7 measures of support. These include recognising care-experienced people as a group likely to face discrimination, and that councils have a duty to put the needs of disadvantaged people at the heart of decision-making, assessing the council's future decisions, services and policies through equality impact assessment to ascertain impacts on care-experienced people and treating care experience as if it were a protected characteristic. Councillor Andre's motion also calls for care experience to be included in the publication and review of the Isle of Wight Council's equality objectives, aims public bodies are required to adopt by law.
Floating Bridge out of action for 10 days for annual March refit, from the Island Echo, read by Lee. The Cowes Floating Bridge will be out of service for 10 days from the start of next week for its annual refit. It has been confirmed by the Isle of Wight Council that the East Cowes service will be suspended from Monday the 24th of March. A normal timetabled operation will resume on the morning of Thursday the 3rd of April. The usual passenger launch service for pedestrians and cyclists will operate across the River Medina during the period of suspension. Last month, it was revealed that the troubled floating bridge service generated a £500,000 loss last year. In March last year, County Hall's Cabinet unanimously agreed to replace Floating Bridge 6, which was first introduced to the River Medina in May 2017. As a result, in the next couple of months, an engagement process is expected to begin with the public and local stakeholders.
This is Chris reading an article from the Island Echo. Police welcome new digital detection dogs to sniff out electronic hardware. A new cohort of Digi dogs has been welcomed to Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary's Joint Operations Unit to help combat the ever-changing challenges of digital crime. The digital world is constantly evolving, with criminals constantly finding new ways to exploit technology for illegal purposes. With their ability to detect increasingly sophisticated devices, these dogs provide a crucial asset in the fight against crime. The new recruits, Evie, Iggy, and Moss, are undergoing an intensive 8-week training course aimed at equipping them with the skills to detect a wide range of digital and media recording devices. They are also joined on the course by 6-year-old Loki, who has already worked on the team for a number of years, but is renewing his license with his new handler. Once they complete their training, they will be joined by seasoned professionals Dizzy and Ruby, who already have years of experience in sniffing out digital devices. These experienced dogs play a vital role in uncovering key evidence in cases involving serious crimes, including those related to child exploitation, fraud, and stalking. Their superior sense of smell has been honed to detect a range of digital devices, such as mobile phones, laptops, USB drives, SIM cards, crypto wallets, hard drives, spy cameras, and even tracking devices. This skill set is invaluable, as criminals often use these devices to store or transmit illegal content, making it essential to locate them quickly and efficiently. Police dog instructor Tim Lawrence says, "Our detection dogs offer invaluable assistance to numerous departments across the two forces. They're skilled at working in diverse environments, from residential areas to open landscapes, from vehicles to commercial buildings and even aircraft. These dogs have supported a wide range of investigations, including searches for child abuse investigation units, priority crime teams, and commercial vehicle units, where they've uncovered critical evidence that would have been difficult to locate otherwise."
This is Brian reading an item from Isle of Wight Radio. New nature reserve to protect Isle of Wight's last unspoilt inlet. The James Tuttiett Charitable Trust, JTCT, has announced the purchase of King's Quay, an important untouched quay on the northeast coast of the Isle of Wight. The land totals 222 acres and includes an area which was previously being considered for gravel extraction. The news will see the whole area will be protected as a nature reserve, and plans to strengthen and restore natural habitats have been unveiled as part of a collaboration between JTCT and the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust, HIWWT. There will be no gravel extraction. In partnership with the HIWWT, the JTCT looks forward to restoring the natural capital at King's Quay by increasing biodiversity and protecting wildlife, so this unique piece of land becomes a haven space for nature in perpetuity. The work forms part of HIWWT's Wilder 2030 project, aims to provide a wilder Hampshire and Isle of Wight by ensuring nature's recovery with returning wildlife and stronger ecosystems. In turn, everyone will benefit from a healthier, more resilient natural environment. The last unspoilt inlet on the Solent King's Quay sits midway between the villages of Fishbourne, Wootton and East Cowes on the northern coast of the island. It's unique in that it's one of the very few undeveloped estuarine habitats on the island and was recently described by the Isle of Wight Natural Landscape as the last unspoilt inlet on the Solent. Ecologically, the site is of importance due to the huge diversity of habitats, including freshwater swamps, reed beds, salt marshes, and mudflats. These areas provide vital sites for wintering rare bird species and is of national importance due to the presence of Osborne beds, exposed shoreline beds in which abundant fossil fish remains can be found. The land also includes areas of ancient woodland, which is rich in important plants such as butcher's broom and early purple orchids, together with narrow-leaved lungwort, which is common in ancient woodland on the shores of the Solent. This unique mix of shoreline and ancient woodland habitats makes King's Quay of significant natural and scientific interest, representing a rare meeting point between two natural ecosystems. Announcing the purchase of the land, James Tuttiett of the JTCT said, "King's Quay is a truly special place, and we are honoured to be playing a role in preserving its unique natural beauty and ecological importance. By partnering with the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust, we can ensure this vital habitat thrives for many generations to come, providing a sanctuary for wildlife and a legacy of conservation." A spokesperson from HIWWT said, "King's Quay is a rare and precious haven for wildlife, and we are proud to be working with the James Tuttiett Charitable Trust on this conservation opportunity. Protecting and restoring key ecosystems such as this is a core part of our Wilder 2030 vision for a richer, more biodiverse future for Hampshire, the Isle of Wight and beyond."
Outrage over house conversion that would render extended family homeless. From the Isle of Wight Radio, read by Lee. An Isle of Wight tenant has expressed outrage over a proposed house conversion that would render her homeless, along with her extended family. Enya Dunn Green condemned Martha James of Plan Research's planning application to convert two existing flats within Hursley, a house with a substantial garden on the Broadway at Totland. As a resident of the property, she slammed it as an action that would ruin an intimate community built over 5 generations. According to Ms. James' plans, a rear extension to the building would enable the creation of 4 two-bedroom room apartments, replacing one 3-bedroom flat and another with 4 bedrooms. The council has so far received 8 other submissions raising concerns with the application. They relate to the eviction of the extended family living in the 2 existing flats, pressure on local infrastructure and public services, parking availability, traffic congestion, negative aesthetic and environmental impacts, the developers' motivations, overdevelopment and local housing needs. Ms. Dunn Green said, "My family and I have called this humble 2-flat villa in Totland our home for over a quarter of a century. While my immediate family and I reside in the bottom flat, my extended family live in the one above, creating a truly wonderful family home. They, the applicants, have recently put forward a planning application seeking to transform our 2-bed flat into a 4-flat property, an action that would render us homeless and ruin the intimate community we have built over 5 generations we have lived in this village. It's essential to keep in mind that tenant eviction not only leads to homelessness, but also contributes to the grave social issue of housing instability. We are not against property development, but this should not come at the expense of long-term tenants, our community, and our mental and emotional strain such changes bring. The application's design and access statement said, this scheme would create relatively affordable housing for starter homes or properties for those wishing to downsize. According to the statistics available, 2-bedroom properties are in the most need on the island, and these units involve the reuse of previously developed land. There have been several previous permissions for conversions to 4 flats at this property, as the council have consistently agreed that the property is suitable for conversion. Unlike previous schemes, the current application does not propose on-site parking spaces, as this would require the loss of the front garden area. With this in mind, we have demonstrated within a parking survey that there is sufficient vehicle parking available in the nearby car park and on the roads in the area. County Hall's public consultation on the proposal finishes on April the 11th, and a decision is expected on May the 6th.
This is Chris reading an article from the Isle of Wight Radio. Seafront cafe plans face renewed opposition. Contentious revised plans for a new seafront cafe in an Isle of Wight village have been met with renewed opposition. Bembridge Parish Council, BPC, joined Island Roads and a neighbouring resident in objecting to Hospitality Business SE Views updated plans for a cafe at Kingsmere on Lane End Road in Bembridge. BPC cited insufficient parking provision, an adverse impact on the character and appearance of the locality, and an adverse impact on neighbouring properties. Mark Davis, who lives on Lane End Road, said, the scale of this proposed development will significantly impact the residents' enjoyment of their properties. The proposed opening hours are quite different to the former cafe on the site, which was open from Easter until October between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. On Fridays and Saturdays in July and August, it was open from 10 a.m. until 9 p.m. I encourage these to be the hours approved and not the request for 8 a.m. until 11 p.m. throughout the year. Island Roads objected on 3 grounds. Insufficient information has been provided to determine if the displaced demand for car parking likely to be generated by the proposed development would have a significant impact on the surrounding highway network. The proposal would also introduce additional hazards to highway users due to it not safely accommodating service and delivery vehicles and insufficient visibility for a safe and suitable access. A statement submitted by the applicant's agent, Paul Gallagher, said, the revised scheme offers 4 parking spaces and bike storage for staff use. The revised application has introduced and included a pavement/walkway within the revised scheme, as well as gardens to make it safer for pedestrians. The revised scheme has drastically decreased the footprint of the building, which has in turn increased the area immediately to the south of the building, allowing for access gates double the width of the original scheme, an additional 2 car parking spaces, and a large loading area with a swept path analysis and vehicle access diagrams clearly showing how delivery vehicles can access the site via the main gate. The introduction of a walkway and vegetation would keep the pedestrians off the road and safely out of the RNLI's way. The new scheme has almost 40% fewer seats, reduced in volume by over 2,000 cubic metres, and has an additional 124.5 square metres of public walkways and 254 square metres of public gardens. County Hall's public consultation ends on Friday and a decision is due on April the 15th.
This is Brian reading an article from the Island Echo. Local theatre celebrated at inaugural Isle of Wight Amateur Theatre Awards evening. The inaugural Isle of Wight Amateur Theatre Awards evening, held at Northwood House on the 14th of March, was a resounding success. Representatives of all theatre groups who welcomed Isle of Wight theatre judges to their 2024 shows gathered to celebrate the very best of the island amateur theatre community. Hosted by Simon DeBell and sponsored by Court Red-Handed Productions, the evening recognised a wide range of pantomimes, plays and musicals, as well as individual actors who represented the amazing talent we have on this small island. Organisers were pleased that Caroline Hannam, daughter of John Hannam, was able to attend. John, of course, hosted a series of theatre award evenings for many years and sadly passed away in 2021. She said, "It was wonderful to spend the evening in the company of so many of the island's theatre community, celebrating their achievements and remembering my late father." Caroline Hannam presents Best Musical Award to Curtain Call Creative for Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. Caroline presented 3 awards, including the John Hannam Award for contribution to the theatre community, won by First Act. Accepting the award on their behalf, Carol Laidler, First Act's founder, said, "It was an honour to receive the John Hannam Award. He was such a wonderful supporter of First Act and all amateur theatre productions on the island." We were also delighted to welcome as a guest presenter Nancy Allen, widow of Ray Allen, famous for writing Some Mothers Do Have 'Em, among many other things, who would have been 85 the day after the awards. She said, "Ray would have loved this evening and to see the awards resurrected. He and John Hannam were good friends, and Ray was always a great supporter of Island amateur theatre." A full list of winners is published on Isle of Wight Theatre's website, iwtheatre.org. The headline winners were Best Pantomime, Robin Hood by Amy White Theatre, Best Play, Canterbury Tales by Cowes Amateur Operatic and Dramatic Society at Trinity Theatre, and Best Musical, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat by Curtain Call Creative. Congratulations to all the winners and nominees. After the success of this year's event, Isle of Wight Theatre will be planning something even bigger and better for 2026.
Fashion event in aid of Sight for Wight be held later this month from the Island Echo, read by Lee. Newport's Dress for Less is supporting the island's oldest working charity, Sight for Wight, as it celebrates 160 years this year. As part of our celebrations, Dress for Less is holding their first external fashion event this month, the 29th of March, to both help raise funds for their charity, but also to continue their pledge to stop clothing ending up in landfill. In the past 12 months, they have saved thousands of items of clothing from ending up in the bin. Debbie Durbridge, shop manager, said, "I absolutely love our shop. We see some amazing items coming through the door, many unworn with their original tags, and we sell them for our clients on a 50-50 basis." When I buy clothes, I like to try them with a range of accessories. This is exactly what we offer here at Dress for Less, and we are always on hand to help with colours and styles. The event is being held at Cowes Masonic Lodge, and tickets are selling out fast. With brands including Hobbs, Phase 8, Coast and Karen Millen for as little as £20, and mother of bride brands such as Condici, Jacques Ver and Gina Beccioni, some of which retail at over £500 but are sold by Dress for Less for as little as £100. Lisa Hollyhead, CEO of Dress for Less, said, "As someone living with no colour vision, I love the help and advise Debbie, Tracy and their team of loyal volunteers offer. They understand how having the outfit that suits your own skin tones and shapes makes all the difference. Dress for Less supports Sight for White, the island charity here to support living with all levels of sight loss." Lisa went on to say, "Sight for White offers tailored support for those living with sight loss. We are here to help you as a unique individual you are. Live safely, confidently and independently. With 15 activities and groups to join, we are a user-led organisation, putting the needs, desires and wishes of our members at the forefront of everything we do. For further information or to purchase tickets, contact the shop manager Debbie at Dress for Less on 01983 523 197 or by email at retail@iwsb.org.uk.
This is the second part of the Talking News, read by Madeline and
Alex from the Isle of Wight County Press.
And we begin with more news items taken from the county press. Care home report found potential sexual abuse by Zach Saunders. A damning inspection report that uncovered serious concerns over potential sexual abuse and other significant failings has led to the closure of Blackwater Mill Residential Home. According to the Care Quality Commission, the CQC report, the regulatory body identified multiple incidents where sexual abuse had potentially occurred. However, there was no evidence demonstrating that the home had taken appropriate action to fully investigate these incidents, mitigate future risks, or implement measures to ensure its residents' safety. The report also revealed that Blackwater Mill had failed to report incidents, including sexual safety concerns, and even the deaths of service users, to the CQC as required. People were placed at risk and not protected from sexual abuse, the report states. The service failed to take effective and timely action to keep people safe and failed to put in place appropriate mitigation to prevent sexual abuse and assaults from happening. The report highlighted that Blackwater Mill had not notified safeguarding authorities and the CQC about the true extent of the incidents that had taken place. People were placed at continued risk of harm due to the service's failure to act, the report reads. Neil Cox, CQC Deputy Director of Operations in the South, emphasised the failure of leadership at Blackwater Mill in ensuring the safety of residents. When we inspected the home, we were concerned to find poor leadership meant issues identified at previous inspections still hadn't been addressed. As a result, people's care fell well below the standard they have a right to expect, and they continue to be at risk of harm. In addition, leaders still didn't have an effective system in place to monitor incidents or ensure people were protected from abuse. They hadn't reported or investigated multiple occasions where suspected sexual abuse had occurred. They also hadn't taken appropriate action or learned from multiple incidents where people had fallen or experienced choking at the home to prevent further harm.
Beauty spot saved for nature as gravel project is scrapped by Zach Saunders. Controversial plans to extract gravel from a beauty spot in Wootton have been scrapped and the site sold instead to a nature trust. A new partnership has been formed to protect and enhance Kings Quay, previously known as Palmer's Farm. The James Tuttiett Charitable Trust, JTCT, has announced the purchase of the untouched quay on the northeast coast of the island, totaling 222 acres, from previous owners Tim and Danielle Rogers. The news will be welcomed by local residents who were against the gravel extraction plans. The whole area will be protected as a nature reserve, and plans to strengthen and restore natural habitats have been unveiled as part of a collaboration between JTCT and the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust, HIWWT. The partnership said it looks forward to restoring the natural capital of Kings Quay by increasing biodiversity and protecting wildlife, so this unique piece of land becomes a haven space for nature in perpetuity. The work forms part of HIWWT's Wilder 2030 project, aims to provide a wilder Hampshire and Isle of Wight by ensuring nature's recovery with returning wildlife and stronger ecosystems. Kings Quay sits midway between the villages of Fishbourne and Wootton and East Cowes. It is unique in that it's one of the very few undeveloped estuarine habitats on the island and was recently described by the Isle of Wight Natural Landscape as the last unspoiled inlet on the Solent. Ecologically, the site is of importance due to the huge diversity of habitats including freshwater swamps, reed beds, salt marshes and mudflats. The land also includes areas of ancient woodland, which is rich in important plants such as butcher's broom and early purple orchids, together with the narrow-leaved lungwort, which is common in ancient woodland on the shores of the Solent. James Tuttiett of JTCT said, "Kings Quay is a truly special place, and we are honoured to be playing a role in preserving its unique natural beauty and ecological importance. By partnering with the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust, we can ensure this vital habitat thrives for many generations to come, providing a sanctuary for wildlife and a legacy of conservation."
Top Union Man on board with Ferry Review by John Moreno. A former trade union leader has been appointed to tackle ferry issues. Sir Paul Kenny, who was the General Secretary of the GMB Union, has been chosen by the Isle of Wight's 2 MPs to lead efforts to improve the island's ferry services. The Isle of Wight's MPs, Labour's Richard Quigley and Conservative Joe Robertson, have, since their election in July last year, joined forces to address concerns over the ferry services provided by Red Funnel and Whitelink. These concerns include the reliability and costs of cross-Solent services. The MPs have said Sir Paul's 10-year leadership of Britain's third largest trade union adds genuine weight to the cause. All Isle of Wight councillors signed up last week to support the Islanders' Charter. This charter, published in December last year, was created by the MPs and Isle of Wight Council leader, Councillor Phil Jordan, to establish a roadmap for the ferry companies, taking into account the needs of island residents, businesses and the visitor economy. Sir Paul said he was pleased to take on this new role and looks forward to working with those determined to bring about change. Our message to the ferry companies is simple. Their primary purpose must be serving the people of the Isle of Wight. and they are falling far short of any reasonable expectation, Sir Paul stressed. The new board looks forward to engaging on a constructive basis on accountability, reliability and pricing. But the days of treating passengers and other stakeholders like mushrooms are over. Mr. Quigley welcomed the appointment. He said, "This new board with direct accountability to the island's MPs and therefore island residents will help build our case with the government. Sir Paul would be in a strong position to support us to do this. He knows how negotiations work at the very highest level and understands how the system works. He will be able to help in direct negotiations with ferry companies too." Mr. Robertson echoed his counterpart's sentiment. The board's strength is the joint working between Labour and Conservative MPs and the island's council, now backed by a prominent former trade union leader, he added. Essential public transport is regulated and subsidised through the UK. Getting to and from the Isle of Wight should be no different.
Accusations fly after closure of restaurant by Liam Chorley. It was foolproof. We had a winning formula. Those are the words of Paul Rowling, the building owner of the bandstand on Culver Parade, Sandown, which has suddenly ceased trading under new management. The retiree is at a loss, relies on rent from the building to pay his bills, and feels he's been left in limbo. The business closed its doors in March of 2023, and a year later, it reopened under new management. Its new leaseholders, who signed up on a 20-year lease, promised the same bandstand reimagined. But less than a year on, the restaurant is no more. They signed a 20-year lease, so if they don't want to do it anymore, they can't just hand in the keys, said Paul. They either must pay the remaining rent, which amounts to around £500,000, or assign somebody to come in and take it on. That's what they signed up for, and the restaurant must be returned to its original state, which hasn't happened. A spokesperson for the current leaseholders said accusations written on the window of the venue this week are unacceptable and unprofessional. They said the only outstanding matter relates to a dispute with the landlord regarding the lease, which is currently being handled by solicitors. All rent, utilities and bills were fully paid up to the date of their departure, and all suppliers, staff and HMRC have been settled in full, they say. Paul told the county press, "It was foolproof. We had a winning formula, and what this has become, is not suited for Sandown. Sandown's the bucket and spade parade." The current leaseholders blame the current economic climate, rising staff costs, increased utility expenses, and a decline in visitors to the island, particularly in Sandown, for why the business has failed. The business became unsustainable despite our best efforts, they said. Paul says he can't take the business on himself anymore following the death of his late wife, Donna, who was so instrumental to the venue's success over the years.
Teenager accused of attack. A teenage boy accused of a brutal attack and causing a brain injury to a pensioner in a park has appeared in court. The 17-year-old faced charges of inflicting grievous bodily harm against a man aged 72 in Salters Park, Ryde, on Wednesday last week, March the 12th. He also faced an allegation of possessing cannabis in Upton Road, Ryde, on Tuesday, March the 18th. Appearing at the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court, the boy did not enter any pleas. The pensioner was taken to St Mary's Hospital, Newport, for treatment and has since been discharged. The teenager, who cannot be identified for legal reasons, has been granted conditional bail. He must live with his mother and comply with a curfew to remain indoors between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. daily. The teen is also banned from entering Salters Park and from discussing the case or victim on social media. The teenager will appear at the Isle of Wight Youth Court on April the 23rd.
Island Museum finds common cause with Ukraine. The Isle of Wight's National Poo Museum had a very special visit from the founders of another museum who travelled all the way from Ukraine. Shortly after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, museum curator Daniel Roberts learnt that Kyiv, the Ukraine capital, was home to the Museum of Toilet History. The site has the world's biggest collection of historic toilet-related items and is one of Ukraine's most popular museums. The two museums formed an informal partnership. Recently, Daniel was told the Ukraine's museum's founders were in the UK and keen to pay him a visit and deliver a special gift. Daniel said Marina and Mykola Bodanenko presented us with a copy of a book they'd written on the history of toilets, and in return we offered them an unusual exhibit. An old German toilet which was once part of the now long gone East Cowes Castle. We had used it to collect drawings and messages of support from the public to send our Ukrainian friends. So, a small but historic piece of the Isle of Wight is now on its way to Kyiv, where it should be seen by many thousands of people and stand as a unique mark of British-Ukrainian friendship and solidarity.
No plans for hospital multi-storey. There are currently no confirmed plans to build a multi-storey car park at St Mary's Hospital, the Isle of Wight NHS Trust has said, despite the idea first being touted 2 years ago. Back in 2023, the Trust set out 3 options to increase parking capacity at the site, a decked car park being one of them. The other 2 options involve replacing all existing equipment relating to car parking, including pay machines and barriers, while the second was to create an extra 50 parking spaces adjacent to the main visitor car park. Although it remains an option for the future, the Trust said, "We currently have no confirmed plans to build a multi-storey car park." However, the Trust said it is planning to deliver a number of improvements later this spring, including new signage and car parking payment equipment. It follows long-running complaints about the island hospital's car parking facilities. Reported problems with St Mary's car park ticket machines were among the key issues highlighted by Healthwatch Isle of Wight in its latest January to February intelligence report. A spokesperson for the Isle of Wight NHS Trust said, "As part of our forward planning, we will continue to explore several initiatives for parking at St Mary's."
No review of Joke Court Sentence by Oliver Dyer. A dangerous driver who was spared jail after seriously injuring a 9-year-old boy in a crash on the Isle of Wight will not have his joke sentence reviewed. Owen Chambers of Mountbatten Drive, Newport, was given a suspended 24-month prison term when he appeared at the Isle of Wight Crown Court in February. Court heard how he drove recklessly on Whitwell Road last year, crashing into another vehicle with Bethan Christopher and her son, Reed Christopher Fendyke, inside. The collision sent shockwaves through Bethan's body, and her first thought was that her and her son had died. The leniency of the sentence handed to the 18-year-old led calls for for a review. Describing the sentence as a joke, Bethan, as well as other islanders, wrote to the Attorney General's office in the hope it would be looked at by the Court of Appeal. A month on, it has been confirmed that the threshold has not been met. A spokesperson for the Attorney General's office said, "After careful consideration, the Solicitor General has concluded that this case cannot properly be referred to the Court of Appeal. A referral under the unduly lenient sentence scheme to the Court of Appeal can only be made if a sentence is not just lenient but unduly so, such that the sentencing judge made a gross error or imposed a sentence outside the range of sentences reasonably available in the circumstances of the offence. The threshold is a high one, and the test was not met in this case." On the day of the crash, Chambers fled the scene while Reed was taken to hospital in Southampton, where he was treated for internal bleeding of the bowel. Though Reed has recovered physically, the psychological scars remain for both. Speaking following the conclusion of the court case, Bethan said, "We're such a close-knit community down here, and then you've got someone like him who is a law unto himself and has no care or empathy. He's got no respect for any of it. Part of the upset is he's now back out. It's about looking after everyone in this place."
3 charged after station knife drama by a court reporter. 3 men have been charged in connection with an alleged knife incident at Newport bus station. The men were granted bail at the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court on Tuesday after the incident on Sunday, which saw areas of the town put into virtual lockdown. All 3 defendants entered the dock together and entered no plea to all charges. Patrick William O'Flynn, 41, of Lee Road in Sandown, was charged with using or threatening of violence to cause fear of harm and possession of a knife blade or sharp-pointed article in a public place. Benjamin David Blenkinsop, 23, of Royal Architects Road in East Cowes, was charged with affray and possession of an offensive weapon in a public place. William Cantelow, 24, of Chapel Street in Newport, was charged with affray. Prosecutor Giles Fletcher said police were alerted to the incident by members of the public at Newport bus station at around 6:45 p.m. Blenkinsop was allegedly carrying a baton, while O'Flynn was said to have been in possession of a knife, the court heard. Mr. Fletcher said the charges against all 3 men were not suitable to be heard at the Magistrates' Court and should be sent to the higher court. Both Michael McGoldrick for Blenkinsop and Cantelow and Tom Cook for O'Flynn agreed with Mr. Fletcher's submission. Mr. Goldrick and Mr. Cook requested bail for their clients and outlined their reasons why. After deliberation, magistrates agreed and granted all 3 conditional bail to appear before the Isle of Wight Crown Court for a plea and trial preparation hearing on April the 28th. The County Press live reported the incident on Sunday evening. Nearby Southview was put into virtual lockdown, with police advising residents not to leave their homes, while a search of the area was carried out. The bus station and an alleyway to St James Street were cordoned off by officers.
Food to the fore for pub. A popular pub is to reopen next month with new landlords and a new farm-to-fork concept. The Sun Cowbourne has been taken over by Tegan Killingback and Tom Collinson from Porchfield. Tom is a farmer, while Tegan has worked in pubs for the past decade. Tegan said she wanted to push herself further, and taking over The Sun is a great opportunity to do just that. Tom has always had the interest in pubs, and this one came up, and we said, "Do you know what? Let's go for it," she said. The pair saw great potential in the pub and are currently in the process of completely renovating the building. Tom said, "The Sun has always been a bit like walking into your granny's living room. We're totally refurbishing the pub and it will be totally unrecognisable. The pub will pride itself on serving Isle of Wight based food with a farm-to-fork concept. Over time, we'll use all our own meat wherever possible," Tom, who runs Lamsley's farm, said. Tegan said, "The idea is the meat we're going to be using, we can literally say where it's come from. Jack Hinch from Motterston has been employed as the pub chef. There are also plans for a veg garden at the pub. Tom and Tegan plan to open on April the 2nd.
Funsphere for Autism Charity by Oliver Dyer. There is a huge worry and uncertainty among autistic people on the Isle of Wight after an invaluable charity lost a significant portion of its funding with less than a month's notice given. Autism Inclusion Matters Isle of Wight, the AIM, provides vital peer support and a safe place for children, teenagers and families on the island. While its funding comes from various sources, £55,000 is provided by the Integrated Care Board, the ICB. Just last week, however, Service Manager Claire Collins said she was told contracts with the ICB, due to end on March the 31st, were not being extended. We expected that something wouldn't be renewed or we wouldn't have the same amount of money, but didn't expect to lose everything, Claire said. It means the charity, which has 7 paid autistic members of staff, no longer has funding to deliver family support groups, workshops for young people, help for adults and training for schools. I guess I was a bit angry and devastated and worried for my staff and our community, she said. There are over 3,000 autistic people on the Isle of Wight. What does it mean for them? Beth Morgan has been using the service for 18 months and fears the funding withdrawal will leave a gaping hole in autism provision. I understand cuts are happening across the NHS, but to go from what is a well-led service to basically nothing, where does that leave everyone? Meanwhile, Caroline Telling attends the charity's Autism Zone on St James's Street, Newport, with her daughter Keris. She said her 14-year-old has found new friends and a positive experience of who she is, thanks to the invaluable service. I felt sick when I heard, knowing that this is somewhere Keris can come to and feel safe, she said. For David McCulloch, who has worked there for around 8 years, the charity has been hugely important. He said, "It's a wonderful place for an autistic person to come and not feel the pressures of everyday society. It has also been a lifesaver for Sophia, who attends women's and girls' groups. It's so amazing to feel part of something and meant I didn't feel alone and isolated as I did before," she said. Claire said she wants the charity to continue in some capacity and hopes the void can be filled. As long as they're getting the support from somewhere, it doesn't matter if it's us, she said.
£160,000 fraud man feigned cancer fight. A carpentry business owner who defrauded his customers for £160,000 and falsely claimed he had bowel cancer to fob off his clients has been spared jail. Scott Richard Carpenter of Quarry Road, Ryde, appeared at the Isle of Wight Crown Court last Thursday. The 41-year-old admitted 2 counts of participating in fraudulent business carried on by a sole trader. Michael Forster, prosecuting on behalf of the Isle of Wight Council, said that between May the 1st, 2021 and November the 30th, 2022, Carpenter ran Bespoke Carpentry and Building Services Isle of Wight. Carpenter operated the business for 19 months, during which time he was involved with 6 customers who paid him substantial amounts of money for work either completed poorly or not completed at all. He defrauded his customers out of a total of £162,000. He defrauded his customers out of a total of £162,000. Hang on. He defrauded his customers out of a total of £162,275, including £88,000 from one customer alone, after asking for payment up front to purchase materials for specific jobs. He did not spend the money as promised and lied about purchasing materials by manipulating his clients and producing invoices from previous jobs to buy himself more time, said Mr. Forster. The court was told Carpenter declared himself bankrupt, but continued to fob off customers and lied about having medical conditions, including terminal cancer. Mr. Forster said Carpenter told 3 customers he was in hospital because he had bowel cancer, despite never being diagnosed. A series of victim impact statements were read out in court, touching on the terrible impact Carpenter's deceit had on his customers. One of them spoke of the financial, emotional, and psychological strain he caused, and how the family would be paying off debts for the next 30 years as a direct result of his lies and deception. The court heard he destroyed their lives, lacks the courage to admit his mistakes, and caused irreparable damage to a hard-working family. Jonathan Underhill, defending, conceded nothing he said would take away or undo the anguish Carpenter had caused. He said Carpenter went from one lie to another in a desperate attempt to keep his business afloat. Mr. Underhill said Carpenter was disgusted with himself and accepted it was all his fault. Cold comfort though it may be, Mr. Carpenter is sorry for what he has done, but it makes little difference to the lives he has blighted, said Mr. Underhill. The court heard Carpenter received malicious telephone calls, had feces smeared on his door, and had people challenge him outside his address. Recorder Clive Dow said no builder with a shred of personal pride left would consider the work Carpenter did carry out was to a satisfactory standard.
Luke looks to bright future in Specially Adapted Home by Laurie Little. It was a happy homecoming for rugby player Luke Orton this week. He has finally moved back into the family home in Ventnor after being left paralysed from the neck down on July the 22nd, 2023. Since the accident, which happened during a rugby game on Ryde Beach, Luke has had a long journey of hard work, physical pain and mental challenge, but his patient nature has kept him remarkably positive throughout. The 28-year-old met the county press at his newly adapted home when he returned home on Wednesday and said, "It's great, I'm feeling great. I'm usually a patient person and I have an it is what is attitude." Not only did Luke break his neck, he severed his spinal cord, and this is where the major complications come in. He now relies on a 24/7 team of 6 or 7 carers to give him round-the-clock care. Now he is home, he may adapt to not needing overnight care given time. His parents, Leslie and Tony, have overseen the adaptation of the entire ground floor of their home for Luke. A huge space encompassing a kitchen, lounge, bedroom and bathroom. It leads directly out to the garden, with sea views overlooking Ventnor Bay. Asked how he felt, Luke said, "I'm looking forward to my future here. It's time to move on. I don't know what the future holds, but I will try to enjoy it to the maximum." Luke was given a Guard of Honour style farewell from the Laidlaw unit at St Mary's, where he had been living while rehabilitating. He has received a lot of help from the RFU Injured Players Foundation, which supplied him with his state-of-the-art wheelchair, and there is a skiing trip planned courtesy of the charity. The rugby community has really rallied round, including Luke's team Sandown, and he has not lost his love for the game. He recently went to watch England v New Zealand.
The True Legacy of a Sailing Legend by Alex Cooper. Paralympic gold medalist and Sailing Foundation owner Andrew Castle has died after a short illness, aged 83. Andrew, of Cowes, was born in Sussex in 1942, without legs and with deformed hips. He moved to the island at a young age and began sailing at 9 years old. Andrew, whose father was farm manager at Norris Castle, read a book about the Kon-Tiki expedition and shortly after made his first foray into sailing with an ineffective pine log raft constructed with wood from Norris Beach. But it wasn't long until he got into the real thing, sailing in a 9-foot dinghy in Wootton Creek from age 10, eventually purchasing a 12-foot boat with all his savings in his teens and entering local races. His grandmother bought him a second-hand albacore, and Andrew became the youngest champion of the Albacore Nationals in 1961. A member of Cowes Corinthian Yacht Club, he competed in able-bodied crews, never letting his disability hold him back, and sailing across multiple disciplines, including surviving the 1979 Fastnet and becoming European champion in the Sigma 33 class. In 1996, he was selected to lead the first GB sailing team at the Paralympic Games in Atlanta, US, returning to the island with a gold medal. After this feat, he set up the Andrew Castle Foundation, a charitable organisation supporting people with disabilities, mental health conditions and long-term illnesses by getting them involved with sailing and yachting. The foundation's crew compete in Cowes Week, with many going on to sail with able-bodied crews. The Andrew Castle Foundation said, "It is with great sadness to inform you all that Andy Castle passed away after a brief illness. We will share more about Andy's amazing legacy in days to come, but he has been the backstay of the foundation right to the end."
Lucky escape after car careers into field. A car crashed into a field off the Isle of Wight's iconic military road last Saturday night. Emergency services were called to Compton, near Compton Farm, at around 11 p.m. Firefighters, police and paramedics from the Isle of Wight ambulance service attended. The road was shut for a time. A car left the road just past Compton Chine car park, coming to rest in a field. Daylight revealed the wreckage of the vehicle, which had travelled some distance into the field. Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary confirmed the driver escaped serious injury. A spokesperson said, "We were called just after 11 p.m. to a report of a single vehicle collision. A car had left the carriageway One person reported a minor injury. Yesterday, police confirmed no arrests have been made in relation to the incident.
Burglar jailed after breaking into pharmacy. A burglar who broke into a Sandown pharmacy and stole prescription medication has been jailed. The case of Daniel Kilshaw of High Street, Ventnor, was heard before Portsmouth magistrates on Monday, March the 10th. The 44-year-old admitted 4 counts of burglary in Sandown between Friday, January the 24th and Saturday, March the 8th. The court heard he entered Jute's pharmacy at Sandown Health Centre as a trespasser and stole prescription medication. Kilshaw, who was on licence at the time of the offences, was jailed for 8 weeks and ordered to pay £200 in compensation. 2 other males charged in connection with an incident at the same pharmacy in Sandown have seen their cases adjourned. Jamie Matlock of Hope Mead, Langbridge, and Paul Smart of Culver Parade, Sandown, also went before Portsmouth magistrates. Matlock, 43, and Smart, 38, are charged with receiving stolen goods belonging to Jute's pharmacy in Sandown on March the 8th. Their cases were adjourned to March the 25th and May the 23rd respectively. Matlock was remanded in custody while Smart was granted conditional bail. Days gone by. 125 years ago, in March 1900, the Boer War was still at the forefront of the news, and the county press published many accounts from island troops. Trooper Hampton of Shanklin, and in the Isle of Wight Yeomanry Troop, wrote of his voyage to the Cape via Tenerife. Although he described the trip as pleasant, they had lost 9 horses on the way, and another 3 were not expected to survive. He also mentioned the death of Trumpeter Denham from Newport, who had been ill from the start and only got out of his bunk once before he died. A 15-year-old Bryston boy, who had longed to go to sea all his life and would, by all accounts, have made a splendid sailor, died of cerebrospinal meningitis just days after joining the ship St. Vincent. It was thought at the time that the excitement of attaining his heart's desire had brought on the illness.
100 years ago, in March 1925, Sandown District Council held a 4-hour meeting to discuss measures to preserve the town's seafront. The cliff path was falling away, and it was proposed that a local landowner be asked to make his land available for a new path. However, one member argued that this was a waste of money and that they should let the bally lot go.
75 years ago, in March 1950, the BBC Any Questions team were to visit Newport for an edition of the show which was to be broadcast on the home service from the Queen's Hall. The panel was cricket commentator John Arlott, broadcaster A.G. Street, political specialist and assistant editor of The Economist Graham Hutton, and Lady Violet Bonham Carter, who was a leading personality in the Liberal Party and honorary president of the United Nations Association.
50 years ago, in March 1975, loss of parking spaces in Yarmouth Square was one of the major issues discussed at the meeting of the West Wight Ratepayers Association. A recent petition signed by more than 200 residents claimed that local tradespeople would suffer as a result of the parking ban. A total of 2,022 people were unemployed on the island in mid-March, compared to the 1,405 in the same period of the previous year.
25 years ago, in March 2000, an off-duty auxiliary coast guard found himself called into action after a vessel was holed in Yarmouth. Dave Pragnall rescued all 6 people from the 31-foot yacht Lady Alvine after she collided with Black Rock at the harbour's entrance. The collision also caused damage to the vessel's propeller and snagged its gas line.
Now, some fascinating history of the island's brickyards by Sarah Burdett. Do you have any photos of brickyards on the Isle of Wight? Bricks are fascinating, but most people never give them a thought. That is why the Isle of Wight Society created the brick hack display at Whippingham Church Hall car park in 2023, freely available for people to look at any time. We are just about to produce a book all about the brickyards, the bricks and the men who work there. There must be more excellent photographs around that could be included in the book, and so this article is a plea to let us know if you have some. I can be contacted eastcowsheritage@gmail.com. The last brickyard to close on the island was at Rookley in 1974. The vast clay pits were being dug then by Graham Attrell, who kindly gave us some photographs of him with his digger. Those clay pits are now deep, attractive ponds. Graham said the work was relentless, as he had to keep working to keep up with the machines and their conveyor belts, constantly making clay into 350,000 bricks a week. Werra Brickyard, run by the Flux family beside the Medina, closed before Rookley. The men dug all the clay by hand, some of it from the river at low tide.
The bricks were fired in a couple of kilns, and then many were shipped direct to the mainland. When Fawley Oil Refinery was being built, Werra bricks went to build the foundations. Others were transported to island building sites by lorry. Down End was another of the last brickyards, closing in 1959. The clay pit and drying sheds were at the top of the hill, known to most of you as Robin Hill. Difficult now to imagine that as a hive of industrial activity. Before mechanisation in 1926, Down End could produce about 400,000 bricks a year. After new kilns, wire-cutting brick machines, and heated drying sheds for all year-round production were introduced, the yard could produce 1,200 bricks an hour. We know of well over 100 brickyards on the island. Some have been lost in time and are only remembered as a name of a field on a map, Brickfield, or Brick Kiln Ground, or Brick Kiln Copse. Others have the names of the brickmakers given in the Poor Rates book. In Carisbrooke, in 1755, Mr. Sanders was paying rates of 4 shillings for a brickyard, but Mr. Moore had to pay 14 shillings for his brick kiln. No photographs of these early yards. Not only men worked at the yards, boys as young as 10 in the 1860s were working a 10 or 12-hour day carrying heavy clay to the brickmaker.
View from Catherine James, a columnist. Why Starmer's A1 Army is a dangerous game to play. If you are feeling a bit out of condition, be warned. In Keir Starmer's latest announcement, he vowed to take on the flabby state. This wasn't an uncivil attack on the 64% of the populace who are estimated to be overweight, but on weak, overstretched and unfocused civil servants. This government-run workforce is, according to Starmer's sweeping as a person, the nation's cottage industry of checkers and blockers. Warming to his theme, the Prime Minister trumpeted that he will cut bureaucracy and focus government on the priorities of the working people. Ah, working people, but not those people working in government whose job Starmer wants to take aim at with the silver bullet of artificial intelligence. Existing functionaries will be obsolete as a new army of tech apprentices pushes forward the digitisation of government services. In the right hands, artificial intelligence can be a thing of beauty, analysing and predicting patterns far quicker than us mere humans to, say, make medical diagnoses or write complex screeds of code. Who can argue with that? But what happens when the computer says no? Away from the powerful tool of AI, even in some of our most mundane transactions, we're being reprogrammed by gadgets. Many electronic appliances we use daily, although created by human industrial designers, take on a personality of their own, cheeping like ever-hungry baby birds, demanding action or attention with a persistent beep or vibrating nudge. Take my car, for example. If I deign to turn the key in the ignition before I have fastened my seatbelt, it peeps at me in an admonishing and relentless note.
As a consequence, my Mitsubishi has trained me to compliantly clunk-click before firing it up. A supermarket self-service checkout elicits a chorus of chirps and peeps, some buoyant and congratulatory, punctuated by others harsh and questioning, which often trigger a flashing red light. Prosecco in the bagging area. Pavlov's shop assistant will react to the summoning bell. Making a purchase in the fabulous resource that is Mountbatten Warehouse recently, I tap my bank card on the contactless payment screen. The assistant, without even looking at the advice, instructed, 2 beeps, gotta insert your card. He translated. 1 is okay, 2, it wants your PIN. I don't even have to look anymore. The man had been programmed by the machine. I've decommissioned the annoying trills on my washing machine and fine-tuned my phone's notifications. But, as anyone who has tried to unjam a photocopier will recognise, irksome and sometimes unfathomable warning tones have the power to drive us beeping crazy. Apparently, Starmer has it sussed though. Artificial intelligence is going to create jobs by doing the jobs of humans. I can't square the circle. Perhaps the ersatz brain will be able to elucidate. Or maybe Keir is referring to the sole remaining bureaucrat whose task it will be to flick the big liberating AI switch to the on position, saving taxpayers' money to be lavished on autonomous weaponized drones. What could possibly go wrong?
Now some public information. Some 999 calls take longer to respond to by Superintendent Rob Mitchell, Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary. As summer approaches, we will see an increase in reported incidents in line with the rest of the country, either crime, ASB or calls for assistance around vulnerability. With the advancement of modern technology, contacting the police has become increasingly easy with the use of mobile devices or online reporting. An example would be drivers witnessing a road traffic accident on a busy road. What may have attracted a few calls 20 years ago can now attract hundreds very quickly. Why does this matter? Well, all calls and reports into our constabulary are routed through our police control room on the mainland, and those calls are taken and assessed by a police controller. From the information available, They then assess the severity of the incident and give it a grading. A grade 1, the most serious, has an expected response time of 10 minutes, and a less serious incident, a grade 2, has an hour to get an officer on the scene or to the victim. These times are closely monitored, and the constabulary is held to account on its ability to meet those times as often as possible. There are many tens of thousands of calls each year that are not so critical and do not need a response within 10 or 60 minutes, nor even 24 hours. However, many of them do require a police response. To help give victims some more reassurance, we have introduced a system of scheduling for less time-critical incidents where a victim can be offered an appointment to speak with an officer online through their phone or laptop. The controller will assess if the nature of the incident is appropriate for this service and offer the victim or caller the option. This service not only gives the caller some certainty on timings and lets them get on with their other things rather than wait for the police attendance available dependent upon other critical incidents, as well as allowing police not to use valuable time attending addresses where the caller may have had to go out. On the Isle of Wight, it has been working well since last spring and has allowed supervisors to concentrate on using available response units on the more time-critical incidents. The sooner police get to such incidents, the more likely they are to capture offenders and valuable evidence before it's lost. So if you are in the unfortunate position where you have to report an incident to the police, listen out and please consider the option of a scheduling appointment within an officer as an option.
Change is coming from Cabinet to committee style. Councillor Phil Jordan, Isle of Wight Council Leader. Very soon, in May this year, the Isle of Wight Council is changing how it governs itself. For many, many years, the traditional system of Cabinet has been the system that the Isle of Wight Council has operated under, delivering policies and strategies along the way and taking decisions according to the information and data available to councillors. As a system, it has many merits and is the most widely used system of governance across the UK for local authorities. Cabinet members can sometimes take delegated decisions over matters, but they are only taken after discussions with fellow Cabinet members, providing a degree of challenge and balance for the issue to hand. Then there is corporate scrutiny, which is the Council Committee dedicated to overseeing and challenging any Cabinet decision, which adds further democracy and balance into the process. Overall, it is a swifter and more direct system of decision making, for better or for worse. It is not without its critics, and there are those that believe it is an undemocratic system which does not serve the resident population well. The main political parties tend to favour a cabinet system and until recently have always operated without concerns within that system on the island. All of that is about to change, and in May 2025, the council is moving to a committee system to replace entirely the cabinet system. Under the new system, decision making will be undertaken by committees of around 8 councillors across 5 committees, covering all the services the council provides. For some matters of importance, the issues will be decided by full council, consisting of all 39 councillors participating. It is hard to tell yet if the system will be any improvement on the current system, and some will note, I'm sure, that 8 committee members taking decisions is hardly any more democratic than 8 cabinet members in the overall sense. But the democratic process has taken place, and the system will start in May and will now include the councillors who decided to implement the system, as the election delay that government has introduced will mean an extra year in County Hall for those same councillors. Let us hope it all works out for the best.
So now we have some What's On items. On Friday the 28th of March at Shanklin Theatre, Prospect Road, Shanklin, there is at 7 p.m. there's a feature of Ben Fogle, Wild. And also in Dina Theatre, Fairley Road, Newport, featuring the Roy Orbison Experience at 7:30. Tickets cost £27.50 and they can be booked by phoning 823 884.
On Saturday 29th of March, Bob Drury's The Neil Diamond Story will take place at Medina Theatre at 7:30 p.m. Tickets cost £27 and are available to purchase at Medina Theatre or via medina.theatre@iow.gov.uk 823-884. And Jack Up the 60s with the Zoots will take place at Shanklin Theatre at 7:30 p.m. Tickets cost £25. A chance to escape back to the 60s. Jack Up the 60s will bring back memories of the golden age of music brought to life on stage by multi-award winning 5-piece band The Zoots. To purchase tickets, email info@jackupevents.co.uk or phone 566 837.
Comedy by Rising Damp writer. A black comedy by the writer of Rising Damp is being staged on the island. Trinity Theatre in Cowes will be staging Natural Causes by Eric Chappell on March the 27th, 28th and 29th and April the 3rd, 4th and 5th. The play follows the story of a professional suicide provider who is called to the Bryce family home. The audience is left guessing who called him and for whom. The play is produced by Dinah Bauman, who said there have been many surprise moments and giggles. She said, definitely uplifting after the winter. Performances start at 7:30 p.m. and tickets are £10. To book, visit caods.org.uk or call 01983 295 229. For more information about the play, visit the Trinity Theatre website.
Piano recital on Saturday 3rd of May 2025 at 6:15 p.m. at the Holy Trinity Church on Queen's Road in Cowes, inaugurating the relocation of a Blüthner piano at the church. Eva Maria Doroszewska, granddaughter of Captain Frankie of the ORP Błyskawice, is an international pianist who will perform music by Chopin, Grieg and Szymanowska. The recital will be preceded at 5 p.m. at the church by an illustrated talk given by Mieciej Tomaszewski about the ship ORP Błyskawice, built in Cowes, that defended Cowes and East Cowes on the 4th and 5th of May 1942. The talk is free of charge. Recital tickets cost £10 for adults and under 18s free of charge from www.ticketsource.co.uk/island concerts.
So now we're moving on to some letters. Remembering Our Roundhouse by Tony Cheverton from Fishbourne. The Roundhouse, featured in the heritage pages, was the first house that my parents owned for about 3 years, I believe, from 1929. My father bought it at the Ideal Home exhibition in Olympia, London, where it had been on display. The exhibition had been opened by King George V, who with Queen Mary toured the exhibits. My mother was told a story that the Queen was particularly interested in the roundhouse, as it was unique and wanted to be shown around. Unfortunately, on entering the bathroom, the door latch jammed somehow, trapping her inside. Fortunately, she was soon freed. When the exhibition finished, my father was able to negotiate a good price for it, as it was the show house and it was duly transported to the island in sections. He had bought a plot of land outside Newport at Forest Road, where the roundhouse was erected. He did not incorporate the novel turntable feature, judging it to be too complicated. The house remained in a fixed position. J.S. White's were, of course, famous shipbuilders, including Second World War battleships. The house I live in here at Fishbourne was, prior to me, owned by Margaret White, who was related to J.S. White. Some years ago I was digging in the garden and unearthed a heavy oblong block of stone. On one side are ornate letters carved JSW 1887. I wonder how that got to be there and where it came from. Your piece about Frank Cheverton has stirred some memories despite sources not being entirely accurate. I worked for him. He was my great-uncle and an exacting employer. I was present at one of the attempted sackings and heard firsthand all about other ones referred to. The governor, as we referred to him, would not permit any smoking on the premises and was very likely to dismiss any culprit he saw. When I think back about the fabric of the old buildings and the inflammable liquids and materials stored within, fuel, etc., we probably didn't take fire safety seriously enough. If and when I had the opportunity to talk to him, he would tell tales of his life, a knowledge of engineering, people and events. He was really interesting. One of 12 children of Richard Bird Cheverton, alderman of Newport and carriage builder Frank, like some of his brothers, worked for his father. Queen Victoria was his most eminent customer, and he would be summoned to Osborne to discuss aspects including cushions and fabrics with the Queen. Much other business followed and continued until the development of motor vehicles, which held less interest to him. Frank was much more enthusiastic. Eventually, in 1923, he formed his own company, Frank Cheverton Limited, as a Ford dealer, acquiring much of the business from his father and brothers. He was joined as directors by his nephew Reggie, my father, and his niece Violet, my aunt, and 10 employees. The business rapidly expanded. Frank continued in charge until his death aged 89. The firm was sold in 1979 to the owners of Premier Motors, and things changed rapidly. They moved to newer and more suitable premises. Many staff left and many new staff joined, such as the nature of takeovers. Not much, but memories of the old business remain.
Commercial Airports Idea by Richard Pettit in Leicester. Much has been said and written over the years about transport to the island. Various fixed road links and even a rail link have been suggested as an alternative to the costly ferry crossing and the inconvenience of the journey. All have been discounted so far due to the capital cost and environmental concerns. Thoughts too that they would ruin the nature of the island. With the rise of air flights within the UK and the development of regional airports, the Isle of Wight is lagging behind other parts of the country in not having a commercial airport or easy access to one. I believe at one time there were 4, at Ryde, Somerton, Bembridge and Sandown. Either of the last two, which still exist as a private airport, could be developed into a commercial airport if the will and finance was there. I believe the runway at London City Airport is about a mile long, and that takes reasonable sized planes. It is enough for flights to European cities and parts of the UK. You wouldn't need anything bigger. The island needs to spread its net wider and attract more visitors from further afield in the UK and Europe. The number of visitors is falling, so it's important that travelling to the island is made easier. Obviously, there will be upheaval and some extra noise to residents affected, but the trade-off against extra visitors is worth considering.
Too expensive for a holiday now, from Dorothy White, Brockley, London. I've been going to Sandown since I was 2 and I'm now 78, but the fares are too dear, even with my disabled badge. I go to see my brother who is 82, but it is too dear now to see him. It's a disgrace, really. The caravan was £1,200 too, so I don't know what I do now.
Rockfall Road, written by John Baldry of Ventnor. On March the 9th, you reported on Isle of Wight East MP Mr Robertson's visit to Belgrave Road. His comments were riddled with inaccuracies. Belgrave Road was recently rebuilt with new retaining walls and a new road base and surface. This cost millions of pounds, for which we residents are grateful. Mr Robertson then wrongly and unjustly criticised the council. He then stated that we are back to square one with all that money wasted. This is a great big lie. I am staggered that my MP lied to us so blatantly. I think an apology is due from Mr Robertson. We asked Joe Robertson if he would like to respond. He replied, I stand by my criticism of the Isle of Wight Council regarding its record of dealing with roads in and around Ventnor. The council still has no long-term whole town strategy for Ventnor, which has challenges with land movement and rockfalls which are not going to go away. When roads are closed, they take far too long to reopen. Some residents became so frustrated they took it upon themselves to clear the debris from Bath Road. The road has been closed for 1.5 years. South Grove Road also remains closed. It is beginning to look like there is a managed decline approach which cannot be allowed to set in. If me, working with residents, helps shine a light on these issues and motivates the council to develop a long-term plan to reopen roads more quickly, it will be positive for Ventnor.
Check it out, Janet Hare Freshwater and Totland Archive Group. The Freshwater and Totland Archive Group is a volunteer group that started in 2010 and moved to the West Wight Heritage Centre in September 2020. The aim is to preserve all the wonderful memories and archives of the area for future generations. We have several thousand photographs, maps and documents that we make available to the general public by displays and talks, etc. There is a team of volunteers who catalogue, index and store the archives. Another group works in reception to greet visitors and answer questions. The centre usually opens each morning, except Sunday, between 10 and 12, and also on a Wednesday afternoon. The general public can order copies of photos that we hold, and it receives many original collections of archives that are put in our care. The next aims are to digitise the archive so it can be viewed online, update the website, recruit more volunteers and involve local schools. Although we are on the main shopping street in Freshwater, people still don't know what we do. West White Heritage Centre is holding a quiz night on Monday, March the 24th at 7 p.m. at the Wesley Hall, Brookside Road, Freshwater. Enjoy a fun evening of questions for £2 per person and teams of up to 4.
Randini to tell his COVID story 5 years on. 5 years on from the COVID pandemic, many are reflecting on that strangest of times. One of those is David Randini, who after spending decades working as a magician, found the entertainment industry completely closed for work. He turned himself into a key worker and is going to be sharing his story of that time of his life with the county press. He is also calling on islanders to share their pandemic stories so future generations can see what we all went through. He said, "Knowing islanders, their stories will be much better than mine. I was more prepared than most as I had been studying the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic. My mother-in-law's grandfather unfortunately died from it, returning from serving in the First World War. An estimated 500,000 people died, perhaps more, yet little was taught about it in our schools. I found a clip on YouTube of an American in his 90s describing how families were wiped out in a day. Social distancing, masks, sound familiar? My story will tell how I joined our heroes in both the care sector and in the COVID ward at St Mary's, but I'm sure your stories will be more interesting. Send your stories to editor@iwcp.co.uk and mark them COVID memories." Randini has come up with a few memory joggers. Masks, lockdowns, spots on the pavement 6 feet apart, the overwhelming of the NHS, clapping every Thursday, eat out to help out, bizarre daily TV briefings, furlough, the vaccine, the empty beaches and roads, panic buying and empty shelves, and most of all, those who suffered terrible loss, who could not visit loved ones, limited numbers to funerals and weddings.
And that's all we have time for today. So it's goodbye from Madeline and it's goodbye from
Alex. The BBC In Touch programme follows, and the Scaffolding News follows that.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello. For the past few weeks, it's been almost impossible to switch on your radio or your TV without becoming embroiled in the debate about the need to cut the welfare bill, with some pretty eye-watering figures being quoted for the amount needing to be saved. 6 billion has often been mentioned. Well, eye-watering they may be, and yet it was striking how rarely the effect which this might have on one group, blind and partially sighted people, actually came up for discussion. This despite the fact that the two major targets for cuts, employment support allowance and personal independence payments, or PIPs as they're known, based on the added cost of your disability, are the ones which most often directly affect us. And, of course, not being part of the conversation can be more worrying than clear information about what's intended. Kelsey Trevitt has been worrying about this debate.
There have been so much talk this week about changes to benefits, particularly around personal independence payment, and it's really frightening. There are so many additional costs to being visually impaired, right down from small kind of household gadgets. So, for example, a liquid level indicator, which, ensures I don't burn my fingers when making my morning coffee, or the second one. Or, from that to having to pay for taxis sometimes or private hire vehicles in areas where I'm not quite so confident. There are so many hidden costs, assistive technology and so much more. What we have at the moment with PIP doesn't even, doesn't scratch the surface of those costs as it is. So having the idea that might be reduced or taken away even further is worrying. I work full-time at the moment, and I cannot emphasise enough that without that support for my independence, I don't think I would be in full-time employment. I don't think I'd be able to access my workplace as confidently, as independently, as consistently. And that's a massive concern. I get as much out of work in terms of living kind of with dignity and independence and having meaning to my life as anyone else does. So there's an additional risk about taking that away as well.
And what are your feelings about the way assessments for PIP are done?
At the moment, the way that assessments take place are dehumanising and demoralising. I effectively have to undersell my independence, undersell my confidence and my ability in order to get the tools and the money that enables me to have that independence. It makes sure that the more independent I am, and I claim to be, the less support I will get to continue with that. And that's a horribly demoralising, dehumanising experience, and completely the opposite of what we should be encouraging disabled people to be and should be empowering disabled people to be.
So now that we actually know more about what the government intends after the publication of Liz Kendall's Green Paper today, we're going to try to offer some clarification. Here are some of the most relevant to us elements in what the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions had to say about the plans for PIPs.
We will not means test PIP because disabled people deserve extra support, whatever their incomes. Yeah. And Mr. Speaker, I can confirm we will not freeze PIP either. Yeah. Instead, our reforms will focus support on those with the greatest needs. We will legislate for a change in PIP so people will need to score a minimum of 4 points in at least one activity to qualify for the daily living element of PIP from November 2026. This will not affect the mobility component of PIP and only relates to the daily living element. And alongside this, we will launch a review of the PIP assessment, led by my right honourable friend, the Minister for Social Security and Disability, in close consultation with disabled people, the organisations that represent them and other experts. So we make sure PIP and the assessment process is fit for purpose now and into the future.
Liz Kendall earlier today. Well, with me to discuss all this and a good deal more are Lord Blunkett, who for a while did the job Liz Kendall has got now, and Roisin Jacklin, Policy Officer with the RNIB, and also their Legal Rights Officer, Dominic Milne. Roisin, I'm going to start with you and just ask you quite simply, how do you think blind people will come out of the Green Paper's proposals?
Yeah, well, I think the big one that we just heard there is kind of the changes and the tightening of the qualification for PIP, which is really alarming. And for people who don't meet that tightening criteria, it's going to have a really big impact on blind and partially sighted people. Nobody living with sight loss should lose out on essential support that they need to live independently with dignity. So we'll be really urging the government to think again.
And you're saying that that's really because they have to prove that they are disabled enough to qualify for those daily living skills by achieving those 4 points on one of the criteria.
Yeah, and we'll absolutely be pushing that we want kind of the current PIP system, which means that you can either kind of accumulate low points across activities or score highly in more than one activity. We think that should remain and is the fair way to assess entitlement, because everyone's needs and lives are different and sight loss is a spectrum.
I feel our role today is to reassure those who don't need to worry and alert those who do. So who doesn't need to worry and who does? I mean, there was talk of toughening eligibility. Do we know any more about that as far as blind people are concerned? I'll put that to Dominic, if I may.
The point that Roisin just made actually does back up the fact that there is a toughening to eligibility with this change in the way the points are going to be assessed. And if you have to score 4 points in one particular bracket, that's going to disadvantage an awful lot of people who are blind and partially sighted. The way the PIP points accumulate, there are a great many claims. We don't know exactly how many yet, because obviously it's brand new that we've only heard this today. A great many of the people who with sight loss who are getting PIP, they get them on the basis of the fact that they will get 2 points in numerous categories. And to up the ante there to the point where they have to get 4 in a particular bracket will disadvantage and rule out many people.
OK, we may come back to that. Lord Blunkett, if you were standing today where Liz Kendall was, what would you have done, particularly as far as blind and partially sighted people are concerned?
Well, I did make representations to Liz just a couple of weeks ago on the mobility element of PIP, and you notice she did mentioned that, and I think we need to follow through. This is a consultation. I think we need people and organisations to get stuck in on the consultation, because the devil, as they always say, will be in the detail. So if we can hang on to the mobility element, that would be, I think, a plus. I know how important it is to me to be able to travel easily, and I can afford to, but many other people can't. Secondly, signposting. A lot of people talking over the last fortnight about PIP, but some of the things they've been saying should be about access to work. And then there is a section on that in the Green Paper. We need to follow through on that, because access to work's got to start working a great deal better. And it would be an alternative for some people from the funding they're using from PIP. And finally, signposting generally is really critical, I think, for blind people. Literally saying, look, if this isn't working, this could. And I don't think there's enough of that within the system.
David, you have said repeatedly that this system is in a mess. After what you've heard today, is it still in a mess?
Yes, but it can be sorted. It will take time. And of course, in that time, people will be fearful. So I think there's got to be a job of work to done to reassure people, to come up with answers on the detail, and to make sure that people understand that if we were to spend, God help us, another 35 billion over the next 5 or 6 years on propping up the existing system, we wouldn't be spending it on actually putting some of the problems right in the first place, working alongside people to gain the skills to get into work, to be able to support them through access to work when they are preparing for or in work, and of course making sure that those who are really, really severely disabled get the support that they deserve. The whole system is a mess, but it doesn't have to be.
I want to move to Roisin for a minute, because Liz Kendall's main criteria today was getting disabled people back to work. But of course, the majority of visually impaired people are actually over 60. Does this have any relevance for them, as far as you can see?
The proposals today were based on benefits for working age people.
So are you saying really that this is not their concern? Because some people will be receiving PIPs, other retired people will perhaps have other benefits. So does this have any relevance as far as they're concerned? Let me bring Dominic in on that then.
It's a fair point that obviously there are a large proportion of people over 50 who will have sight loss, but a great many of those people will be claiming PIP, and a great many of those people over 60 will be claiming PIP. Remember, it is right up to retirement age. So there will be an awful lot of people who will be affected from that particular bracket, as well as all the other working age people that Roisin's mentioned.
Right. I want to stay with you on this, Dominic, because Liz Kendall has made it clear that these changes are about getting disabled people into work. Are there any signs that this will get more visually impaired people into work? I mean, statistically, employers have shown that they find blindness one of the most difficult disabilities to accommodate. We've got statistics which suggest that, only about 25% of employers say that they'd be prepared to make changes to their premises, to their methods, to their work methods. So, I mean, it's all very well, I suppose, to bring in changes to the legislation about getting people back into work, but that will presumably require a lot of support and getting employers perhaps to be more accommodating.
I think there are 2 points that you make there. The first one is that will cutting benefit for people of any age, will that make a difference to them actually getting work? And the answer to that is no. All it will do is drive them further into poverty. I think when it comes to actually helping people into work, obviously it's a welcome move that the government have mentioned. I think Liz Kendall mentioned the fact she was going to provide appropriate, tailored support for disabled people to get back into work. That's fine, but you mentioned the stats with severe sight impaired people. The disability employment gap has remained very, very distant for people who are severe sight impaired. It may have closed slightly in the last 10, 12 years for disabled people generally, but not for people who are blind and partially sighted. So the kinds of support that are going to have to be given, they're going to have to be much more tailored, much more appropriate, and much more focused on ensuring that people with sight loss are going to get the proper help they need to be able to get into and maintain work.
I mean, because one of the things that might strike people is that a lot of the jobs that visually impaired people used to do are not there. I can think of a lot of examples, physiotherapy, clerical work, telephony, light engineering. Surely, to be effective getting people into work, that support has got to be there before you perhaps take any of people's money away.
I completely agree with that. I think the point as I made a second ago, reducing benefit does not get people into work. All it does is further drive them into poverty, and that's what one of the key concerns of most organisations who help people who are disabled, including RNIB, would say. Maybe Roisin has some more interest on this one as well.
Yeah, I was going to come in, if that's all right, and just talk around the government's Access to Work scheme, which we know when it works is brilliant and helps blind and partially sighted people both stay in work and go into employment. But we know there's failures within the scheme, leaving people waiting kind of at the moment up to 6 months before their application is even being looked at. So for us, this needs to be the real focus of the government. If they are committed to supporting more people, more disabled people into work, the scheme really needs to be fixed.
OK, I'm afraid that is all we've had time for today. A lot of elements to this, and I am sure that this won't be the last that we hear of changes to the welfare system, and we'd very much value your responses. Will this make visually impaired people's lives better or worse? Email in touch, bbc.co.uk. Leave your voice messages on 0161836 1338. From me, Peter White, guests Roisin, Jacqueline, Dominic Milne and Lord Blunkett, and our producer Beth Hemmings. Goodbye.
Scaffolding and skips news for the week commencing the 21st of March. In the Newport area at 1 Holyrood Street, Fabian Barber's shop in Pyle Street, 33 Lugley Street, 43 Key Street, Visual Impact, 21 Holyrood Street, Guildhall, Quayside, Quay Street.
In the Ryde area, Castle Street, Watson Bull and Porter, 9 High Street, 87 High Street. Ryde area skips, ABRI, Madeira Road, Seaview, The Lodge, Fairy Road, Seaview, 16 Hamilton Road, and 5 Ribelow Street.
In the Cowes area, 72D High Street, Ship and Castle, 21 Castle Street, East Cowes. In the Cowes area, skips, 39 Newport Road, Kings Road, East Cowes.
In the Ventnor area skips, Shaw Road Car Park, 48 Trinity Road.
In the Shanklin area, 28 High Street and 29 High Street. And 55 Regent Street.
In the Freshwater area, Flaxton Cottage, Western Lane, Totland.
And in the Sandown area, 3 Fort Street, Premier Inn, 1 to 9 Esplanade. And Sandown area skips in Station Avenue.